Really excited to have you here, Chris. We've got Chris Winn here today. He's the CEO of Creative Market, the design asset marketplace. So welcome, Chris.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Can you first tell us just a little bit about Creative Market for those who may not be familiar with you guys?
Yeah, so we're a marketplace for design assets. We've got things like fonts, illustrations, typical customers for us, professional designers, marketers, entrepreneurs. And really what we're about is just helping design projects go faster, help you skip some steps so that your work looks really great at the end.
Awesome. So I know that you began your career as an engineer at Creative Market, and then now you're the
Yes.
CEO. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey? It's kind of crazy. It's been, what, 7 years?
Yeah, 7 years. I never know how to explain the story, but I when I got to Creative Market, I was always really focused on just what can I do for this company. I loved working there, still love working there, and I was always really focused on how company first. How can I help the company? Engineering was what I did early on, but along the way, the company had new challenges. Developing engineering management as a practice, scaling engineering teams, and I was always there to just kind of help however I could. And so many years later, one of our co-founders decided he needed a kind of a next chapter in his life, and Creative Market needed a next chapter too. And he was really, really supportive of me, and the board ended up selecting me as CEO, and it was an intense period of challenges and growth. But I think when you've got those opportunities, even if they're a little scary sometimes, you got to run toward them. So it's been kind of a wild ride. I don't look back a whole lot, but every so
Okay.
often I kind of catch my breath and just think about it. And it's been wild.
And so Creative Market, you guys have not been remote the whole time. So I'm really interested
Yeah.
to kind of dig into how you went from it was a hybrid team. Some you had an office and then some people remote. How did you make that transition when that happened when you just became CEO?
Yeah, it was like a week one decision, right? I had been remote, I'd been in the office, and what I saw happening over time was I felt like there were two cultures developing, kind of two creative markets. And I wanted to pick a lane. We'd had a lot of internal discussion about which lane to pick, and we were kind of stuck on the decision. And when I became CEO, I decided week one, this is the lane we're picking. We're going to go all remote. Most of the team was remote. It was just kind of a small pocket that was in the office, and I really wanted to go for that lane. One of the most important things is we were just honest with the team. We said, this is the decision we've made. This is why we've made it. This is what it means for you. And we were really open. We said, this is not going to work for everyone. That's okay. Come talk to us. It doesn't have to be a scary topic. But this is why we are doing this, and this is who we are. And I think if you're really clear about what the decision is, and you're clear about why you're making the decision, teams, they can agree or not agree, but I think they at least respect, where you're coming from as a leadership team. And we'll never look back because we love remote. We believe in remote. I think everyone's super happy that we went that path.
Yeah. Thinking back, do you think that you managed the team who was in the office differently than you did the remote team members? Was like getting buy-in harder from certain people more than others?
Yeah, I think it naturally happens that you treat teams differently, whether you realize it or not. And I'm borrowing from our COO, Priya Katari here, but the thing that she always pointed out was, equal and fair are not always the same thing. And a remote team and an in-office team, don't trick yourself into thinking that they're the same. They're not. And you shouldn't spend all your energy on trying to make them equal. If you're on a remote team, you're not going to get to go to that, the movie theater, a Thursday night with the team, or that walk to get lunch. You miss out on those opportunities. But the in-office team misses out on opportunities that are unique to remote too. And I think it's all about just realizing what those differences are and then managing for it. One of the things that we think a lot about is, sort of empathy and EQ. A lot of the times what companies do is they'll say, okay, well, we're going to have this remote product team or this remote engineering team, but leadership's going to be in the office, or the managers are here. And when your leadership team doesn't have the same sort of lived working experience as some of the employees, they're going to be at a disadvantage managing those people and setting up the culture the right way. And so even before we went all remote, we always had leadership part remote, part not, managers part remote, part not. And I think that builds the sort of empathy muscles that are really, really important. And if you miss that, very subtle things can start to break in your culture over time.
Yeah, I've heard that before, to make sure that you have management that is remote. That's one of the critical things if you do have a hybrid team. If you think back, this was it 2 years or so ago that you guys started making the transition? What did you do in the first 30 days? Was there anything like really crucial that you did? You said you picked a lane, and is there something that you did as a team, or maybe some certain things that you had the managers do within those first 30 days?
Well, we were starting from scratch in a lot of ways. It was a big moment for the company because Creative Market just had so much success for so many years. And we were getting to a period where we had to rethink a lot of things, because the success, the thing that got you there isn't always the thing that's going to bring you to the next stage. And, we had to be really honest with the team that we needed to evolve the culture. We wanted to get much better about direct feedback. We wanted to really raise our bar even higher than it had been before, and really double down on our team talent and our expectations, and go for a bigger goal. And there was a lot of work to do around the culture, around sort of how the company was growing. I think we had been growing, but not always in a very healthy way for the long term. And so, again, it was just about being really clear about why we're making certain decisions. And, it took some trust on part of the team. If you were on the team at that period, it's like, whoa, new CEO, we're going all remote. We're kind of rethinking our culture. We've got new core values all of a sudden. These core values that we had for years, all of a sudden there's new ones. What does it mean for me? How is this place I love changing? Is the change good or bad? And you had to have a little bit of faith that the leadership and the company was going to take it to the right place. Now, when we look back on the last couple of years, I think a lot of employees would say, this is the best version of Creative Market we have ever had. We're growing, we're profitable, culture's really healthy, feedback's really healthy. But at that time, in that window of change, there were no guarantees that it was going to turn out that way. And so, again, I think it's just about being very clear and then focused on the goal. Where are you trying to get to? And are you seeing evidence, that you're heading in the right direction? Yeah.
It's really interesting you talk about core values. Like, a lot of companies have those core values on their website somewhere. How did you go from having those abstract concepts, okay, here's either the new values or the updated version, to actually showing that this is what you live on a day-to-day basis?
I think something companies miss sometimes is core values have to really mean something. And it's not you say it means something and therefore it means something. It has to mean something to you as a leader, as the author of the values. And one of our values internally is say the thing. If you're feeling something, maybe you're in a critique session and some work is just not right. It's not there yet. And it's not there yet. Say it. Just say it. Be honest and direct with people in service of the work, not to be mean to people, not to be disrespectful, but in service of the work. And so what you have to do, when we brought out Say the Thing, one, it was very intentional. It was meant to change something about our culture. Two, we said, this is what it is, and this is what it isn't. What it is being very direct and honest and open. What it is not is being mean or a jerk, right? And so you set up that framework, and then the thing you have to do, and this is why I say it's important that it means something to you. You got to live it. You got to live it, and you have to model it. One of the reasons say the thing is a value of ours is because it's a value of mine. It's a personal value. I I I'm very direct, and I believe in being direct. And so every day at the company, I'm modeling that, and I'm making it okay for people to do that same thing. And that's how cultures change, when you just see it all the time.
Were there any examples of people who just didn't buy in, to these new changes? Did you feel like you had to deal with, obviously some people may leave. What was that whole process like?
Yeah, a couple people did leave, and um, you know, I think the thing is, cultures culture comes from people. Every hire you make, every employee that stays that another year, and they're still up for the ride, that's how your culture gets developed. And while and I still do, I appreciate all the work that those people did. They had been at Creative Market for a long time, but they needed to change, and we needed to change too, because if we're expressing, this is what the company is now, this is who we are, this is what we're trying to do, if people opt out of that, that's not a bad thing. It's, so long as everyone feels mutual respect in that process, that it's not a scary topic, that you can talk openly about it, I think that's a really good thing. I think change at a company is a really important thing to keep it healthy. And what it does is it lets you know that for the, hopefully 90% of the people that stick around, you've got a team that is, if not fully bought in, at least they're on board to make it work and to give it a try. And so I just think, if whether you're a manager or a leader or a peer who is seeing the team around you change, what you have to know is those moments are not bad moments, and they can feel like it in the moment, but it's actually something really healthy that's happening.
Yeah.
So long as you've got the right goals in mind.
So it's okay for people to opt out. How did you manage that process to let them know it's okay? These are the changes, but essentially you don't have to buy into this if you don't want to. You said that you were direct, so maybe there was a way that you let them know that it's okay, if this isn't for you.
I mean, all we could do at the moment was express who we are and what we're trying to do. I don't think we ever explicitly said, if this place isn't for you, get out. It wasn't like that. It was more like, this is what we are, and we're going to work every day going in this direction. And we're also, a thing we did too is we set up the expectation of feedback and of change. And it gives us the license to point at a situation and say, hey, this is not us. This is us. We got to do this instead. I think one thing, though, is to normalize change. That's something that we talked a lot about in the early days of my tenure. There were times when people would leave, and because it felt like such a family and a small startup, it's like, oh my gosh, someone's leaving. And it felt like this huge moment. And what we work to do as a leadership team is just to normalize change. And when someone would, if someone would leave or move on to another opportunity, we had the same playbook every time. We were even in our emotion. We thanked them. We appreciated them. And it was just a simple, an email update. Here's something at the company that changed, because we didn't want it to feel like a big moment, because the truth is, and the thing that we were trying to get the team sort of acclimated to, things change all the time. Companies are always changing. So it's not like, oh, this thing's not going to happen again, it'll be okay. It's, yeah, this thing's going to happen. And thankfully, we've got a really strong culture. We're really good at hiring. We're prepared for these things. It's no big deal. And we wish someone a lot of luck, and they're going to do awesome things somewhere else. And that's a healthy thing, as long as you don't overreact to it.
That's really healthy to let people know that it's not like an emotional, oh man, someone's leaving, but it's a normal part of the life there.
Yeah.
It's not like that at every company. So very interesting. So you talked about hiring a little bit. You said you're really great at hiring. Did you change how you hire when you became CEO? Is there any big difference between how you used to hire and then what you started doing when you were going fully remote?
we'd started this sort of journey of really upping our hiring game even before I was CEO. It was something that when I was CTO, I cared a lot about. Our COO cared a lot about. It was something she and I worked on quite a bit. I think we're always trying to take things up another level. So even when I say we're really good at hiring, we're always, there's always something you can do to get better. I think the things that we look for are, we want people who are collaborative. We want people who get excited about cross-discipline collaboration. That's something Creative Market does a lot. If you're an engineer on our team, you are not there just to like bang out code and like put your headphones on and go away. Sometimes you have to do that, and that's okay. But you're going to work really closely with product people and designers, and you're going to have to think about our support team who will be on the front lines of dealing with whatever feature ships downstream, and work with them to understand, hey, I'm building this thing. How does this impact you guys? And we keep an eye out for collaboration. And I think it's especially important with a remote company. You've got to over communicate. You can't just hide and like be invisible. Because you don't get those sort of serendipitous social interactions that you would get in office. So that's one thing we keep an eye out for. But there's a lot. There's a lot to hiring and doing it right.
Do you have a favorite interview question or something that's like your particular, like if you're interviewing someone personally, your go-to interview question?
I think the important thing with interview questions is to have a framework, to have them be consistent. And to know why you are asking them. There is an intention to the question. There is a result that comes out of it. I don't know that I've got a favorite, but I think the important thing is one of our strengths as a team is we're good at individualizing. And I think people can answer questions in different ways. The important thing is to keep an eye out for the why. Why are they answering that way? What motivated that type of response? It's not always the content of the answer that is critical. It's understanding a person sort of in their whole. That's hard to do in a compressed interview process. But I think for the most part, if you can check the boxes on, there are some skill requirements that matter for a given role. But otherwise, what you're really doing is you're vetting the relationship, because skills change, people grow, companies change, product initiatives change. There's all those things changing, but the core of it is, are we going to have mutual respect for each other? Are we going to be able to communicate in a way that's really healthy? Most of that other stuff, if you've got the sort of the bedrock of the relationship, most of that other stuff can change and evolve and grow. But if the relationship doesn't have that foundation, those are harder things to solve later. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested in this talk I watched you do. It was at a conference a few years ago, hiring your dream team. And you also talked a lot about not only your process of sort of interviewing candidates, but you pitching to them. So you talked about this 3-act structure. Is that something you still do? Essentially, are you still seeing yourself as someone who's pitching to candidates just as much as they're trying to convince you to hire them?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that's different is I tend to, if I'm involved in the hiring process, I tend to come in at the end. Or, what I've focused on over the last couple of years is hiring an executive team. And it's maybe more habit or just how more I see the world than anything, but I've always looked at it as, yes, there are things to vet in a hiring process: compensation, skills, experience, et cetera, whole set of things that you're looking for. But what it really comes down to is, here's why we do what we do. Here's our challenge. The reason why we need this role is because we have this really big challenge in front of us. And then the third part is, here's why you are uniquely qualified to help us overcome that challenge, and we need you. Now you've got to vet all those other things before you go into pitch mode. I think it's really unhealthy when companies they're like pitch heavy through the whole process, and then if things don't work out, it's actually a really unfair candidate experience. But once you're really set and committed to making a hire, and you know that they are the person that you want to add to the team, I think people want to feel like they're doing important work. And if they're not doing important work for your company, like, why are you hiring them anyway, right? And so that's sort of always how I've structured it. We have it's probably due to other people on the team because we've got such a great team, but we have a pretty high success rate. And when we send an offer letter out, more often than not, they're signing. And so we've been really lucky over the last few years to get really good people.
That's awesome. It sounds like storytelling is a really natural part of kind of your whole process. I really like that. Um,
Yeah.
Something else you mentioned, you talked a bit about over communication at the beginning of our chat. And I mean, a lot of people say that. That's one of the things that's sort of successful in any remote team, over communication. But is there anything
Yeah.
in particular that you did to make sure that that was something that happened? Were there any processes or things that worked well for your team?
We look for a certain amount of maturity in communication. And an engineer, for example, an engineer who shows up sort of mid-project and says, "Hey, this deadline's not working, folks. We got some problems." That's appreciated a lot. That's not a mistake. That's a really good quality, to just own it and see the problem and then speak up. I think not just engineering. I think in a lot of fields, sometimes people are just so intent on like doing good work, they forget to talk about the work. And so we look for that. We reference check. We listen for stories where there's evidence of that happening. We look for people who are humble. I've been lucky. I've had a good ride over the last 7 years. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. Doesn't mean I don't screw up. So we really look for people that can own that. Double A+ grades if at the beginning of the project you're like, "I've seen this before. There's no way this project plan's working." So we love that. We love the communication. I think another thing with remote is it is still important to know people and to meet them in person. And obviously right now it's challenging to do this, but we still do team trips. We still meet each other in person. And I've observed before the quality and the frequency of the Slack communications between two individuals. It really goes up dramatically if they have met in person and talked about things that have nothing to do with work, right? And so I always tell remote companies that too. You can build this remote culture, but let's be honest, it matters to know people and to share space together. And it doesn't mean you have to do it every day, but you've got to be intentional about that too.
Yeah. Before this year, how often did you meet in person as a whole team?
Yeah, we usually do a couple of team trips a year, and that looks like a week in a city. We were going to San Diego a couple of trips in a row, and we try to make it feel really different from the day to day. We don't do long all day sessions. We have 2-hour lunch breaks. We tell people, go walk, get out of here. We try to do a lot of interactive things because the only thing worse than just staring at Zoom for 7 hours is staring at a speaker in a room for 7 hours, right? And so we try to make it feel just very different. Our roadmaps change. We kind of get away from the normal work stuff, and we just we have dinners and we do all that, and just kind of remember we're people.
Your
It's not
people.
just work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of leaders who may be afraid of the transition from office to remote, they're afraid of losing those serendipitous moments. And so obviously
Yeah.
having, whether it's quarterly or sometimes even just yearly meeting in person, that's important. But is there anything you can do to foster those human connections that you can't have in the office right when you're making that transition?
I think that what wins the day still is doing meaningful work. So yes, we have all hands. Yes, we have lunch and learns. Yes, we have Slack culture. We've got goofy goofy gifs. We do something at the company called out of context quotes. So whenever someone says something just uniquely bizarre, if all context is removed from that statement, we like tag it in Slack and keep it in a channel, and then we come back to the quotes later, and we kind of do like a little game show of like who said this ridiculous thing that makes no sense, and so
I
we
love
have
it.
all that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But what wins the day is doing meaningful work. If you're a product designer and you are working on helping to solve a problem and create an interaction, and you've brought it a certain percentage of the way, but inside it just needs something more, it needs something else, and you get that wonderful moment in that critique session or whatever, and someone tells you, I like this, but I don't think it's ready. Here's a bunch of things I think. And you spend the day, maybe you go for a walk and it's sort of rattling around in your brain, and you got that feedback, and then you have the light bulb because you got away from work and away from Figma or whatever. And you have that aha moment of how you're going to solve it. And you rush back to your computer and you build the thing, and it's great. And you show it to the team, and it really is great. And it goes out to the world. Those moments, even if they are remote, those are still things you can feel as a human being. Those wonderful, wonderful moments are absolutely possible with a remote culture. But the core of it has to be really healthy. Do you have a culture where people are doing meaningful work, where there is feedback, where people are giving each other mutual respect? If you've got the sort of the seed of that and the center of it, you can make remote work, you can make in-person work, you can work in an RV. Like anything is possible if the company's really healthy. And I think those serendipitous moments will just happen naturally, because they will find the humanity to each other through their work and through their shared experiences. And then all the other stuff, like, it just happens naturally. I always tell people, if you are trying to force certain moments or trying to like squeeze in culture moments, you might be doing it wrong.
I like that. Yeah. If you have to try too hard, maybe look
Yeah.
a little deeper.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so we're going to end with some lighter, fun questions. They're going to be rapid fire questions, so don't think too hard. Just think about what comes to mind first. So I've got 5 of these for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. So how do you take a break when you're working from home?
I go for a run, get outside.
All right, get outside. I like that. Are you default synchronous or async communication?
I vastly, greatly prefer synchronous. It is much better for my brain. Can't avoid async, but I'm old school for life.
All right. Who is the most interesting person you follow?
I follow not a lot of people, because I'm gonna choke on this question. I'm not on social media very often, but I'm a avid news consumer, so I'm all kind of always in consumption mode. But I don't know that there's one name I can give.
Is there like a podcast or a certain news site that you prefer over others?
Yeah, I mean, podcasts, there are so many. My like hero for all time. Here's one, Kara Swisher. I love anything Kara Swisher does. I will listen to her all day. She is just a hero in tech, and I think she's wonderful.
Awesome. What's the one remote work tool you can't live without?
Uh, a, a pen and a piece of paper. I think the thing with remote, you are all digital all the time, on camera, Zoom, video, Slack. I think it's really important, just like de-digital, get away a little bit, breathe a bit. I think it's important.
Yeah, it's a good balance. And what book has had the greatest impact on you?
I read a book from my childhood, Microsurfs by Douglas Copeland. It has aged well. It is a super like 80s, 90s feeling book, but it's all about sort of tech cult culture, Microsoft, Bill Gates, Seattle, tech in the 90s. It's a really great snapshot, and I actually think it has a lot of lessons that are still relevant today.
Relevant today.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining us here today, Chris, and really looking forward to all the things you guys have coming up. Creative Market is awesome. Check them out, creativemarket.com if you haven't, and we'll see you next week.